All right, we will call to order Safety and Public Works Committee meeting. It is April 3rd, 2023, 7 PM in council chambers. 5 items on the agenda tonight, first of which is an event application for a parking lot closure for the VFW Freedom Fest. And Public Works Director Jesse Dean, if you want to go ahead and take that one away.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So attached is the application requesting closure of the Laurel Street parking lot on June 17th from 9 till 5. They're requesting the closure for their annual Freedom Fest that consists of posting of colors, flag retirement ceremony, memorial service, and some games. They'll have a DJ and some amplified sound. They'll power it by the VFW, and they'll also have some portable restrooms and garbage service. Staff has already received the certificate of insurance on this. We are requesting approval of the closure actually beginning Friday afternoon to allow for staff to place the traffic control materials and prevent cars from parking within the closed area overnight prior to the event the following day.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
I know they don't conflict, but remind me when the the bike event is. It's in June also, correct?
June 3rd, 2
Okay,
weeks
thank you.
before.
And this was the 17th.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'd move to approve this, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 2 is a request for enhanced signage at the Laurel and 8th Street intersection. Mr. Dean, if you want to tell us about that one?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So we received the attached letter in the mail regarding some concerns at the South 8th and Laurel intersection. The author is concerned with people not obeying the stop signs and is requesting some reflective tape on the stop sign and additional LED lights to draw attention to the signs. The sign sheeting is already retroreflective, and it's required to meet some standards as described in the Minnesota Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is actually the standard for all signs within Minnesota. As for the LED flashing signage, they are commercially available. They're roughly about $2,500 per sign, not including installation. The police department did perform some enhanced observation at the intersection to check driver behaviors at that stop sign. They did not see a concern from their end regarding driver compliance with the stop sign, and they did look at their ticketing records and citation records, didn't find a real concern there. In a poll of accident records, staff was only able to find 1 accident in the last 10 years at that intersection. I did list a few other factors on why drivers may not be adhering to the stop sign, but at this time, we are recommending not pursuing the purchase of the enhanced signage.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
is the person who submitted it a downtown resident or a business owner?
Not as far as I can tell. I have the address, but it is not a downtown address. But they may potentially own one of the businesses.
The letter mentions they are a patron,
Okay.
but safety is obviously the main concern. If the police department reports that we've only had 1 accident there in 10 years, it takes a lot of the worry away for me. Not to say that people aren't blowing the stop sign. Maybe the police didn't see it this time, but if it happens, it happens. But if we are to put LED lighting on this stop sign and then somebody requests another one on another stop sign, that's $2,500 per stop sign in 2 directions. So $5,000 per intersection is what we're talking, correct?
It depends on if you wanted all 4 of them that way or just
2 or
2.
4,
It's,
right.
yeah, $2,500 per just for delivery.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I'm not interested in any action, so.
Jesse, so around Washington, we've got those like flags that stick in. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, is that something that, how much does the little flags cost? compared
Not much. We have them we have extra ones at the shop. We usually put them at trouble areas,
I'm
especially with
wondering
like
if
speed
that
limits.
could be something we could. if
It
we
is
got
something that
them.
we could potentially do. I
'em
don't
up.
anticipate a big change in driver behavior from them, but it is something that we can do.
Yeah, that's something to consider. One thing I looked at when I didn't have time to drive it today, but I did look at it on Google Maps. If you look at it, it's the old crosswalks on Google Maps, but one side of the intersection actually has a stop line, and the other 3 don't. I don't know if that's something that we've added back. So coming up to that crosswalk, I think if I go back to driver's ed, that's considered your stop line, but without the actual stop line there, maybe people are forgetting to actually stop. I don't know if that's something we can just easily paint on when we go to paint this year too.
Yep. No, that is something we can do.
At least on, I think, the 8th North and South,
Where it's so wide.
where it's wider and people are going a little faster. I think maybe that's something we could add.
Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I was just going to add that we did take a look at this a few years ago, the city engineer and myself. That is a very wide road. We were looking at potentially diagonal parking or something along those lines. It is a state aid street, and so there was a lot of restrictions with what we could do. You know, but sadly, that's just the case with four-way stops, is you have people that, you know, everyone has to stop, so no one stops. Tends to be kind of the philosophy there. But I know we did look at this and try to find solutions of calming traffic, and there are possibilities, but it would involve reconstruction, and because of it being a state aid street, there's a lot of stipulations that would need to be met with that.
Yeah, I remember that conversation talking about 45 or 60 degree angle parking on one side or the other could possibly fit, but it's not, at this point, it's not necessary. I think if something happens with the development on the Thrifty White building, we could revisit when the whole unit is rebuilt and that street gets revisited too.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Jesse, are we going to address every single time somebody wants to put some enhancement to an intersection? I'm not criticizing this, I'm just curious. Is that what we do? If I say the stop sign at Fifth and D Street is not being adhered to, and I send you an email, ask you to do something, will that get before this committee?
Not typically. This one was actually specifically addressed to the mayor, so I wanted to make sure that he was aware of it, but also just kind of express how staff handles these requests as they do come in, that there are certain standards that are brought up, so.
Okay, thank you.
As
It's a
you're,
busier intersection too. We get some requests from time to time, I think in residential areas more, which the perception is that it's gonna slow traffic down, but the studies show that they actually speed up traffic mid-block. So, but I think this one's worth visiting and looking at. I don't know if we need a motion to consider flagging those north and south stop signs and/or adding paint as a stop line outside of the crosswalk, but something for staff to consider, I think, and
we'll take care of it, yep.
move forward that way.
And, can you reach out to Lori, and let her know that that's what we're doing for now, and
Yep.
All right.
Mayor do that, he got the letter.
oh, sure, I mean, if the mayor wants to do it,
The
you
first
don't.
time the mayor saw this was when it was in the packet, so.
All right. Moving on to item number 3, we have a resolution to authorize the application for the Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant. Again, this is Mr. Dean, go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So we did bring this matter before the Park Board and the City Council to get authorization to apply for the grant. However, we didn't realize that a resolution was, to authorize the application was going to be necessary until after the last council meeting. So at this time, staff's requesting formal adoption of the resolution that supports the application that the council did authorize previously.
So nothing's changed since what we authorized without resolution last meeting?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 4 is a discussion on park properties. And again, Mr. Dean, if you want to
Yes, sir,
take that?
Mr. Chair. Thank you. At the March 6th City Council meeting, 3 parks were left off of the resolution that formally dedicated the parks as parklands. Council requested additional information regarding the properties and if there was opportunity to possibly develop those properties. Staff was able to collect the deeds and have the attorney review them. In the agenda request are the attorney's comments that state there are no reservations on the use of the lands, and all 3 could be developed if the council wishes. So included in the packet are the deeds as well as the completed master plan for Buffalo Hills or Lions Park. As mentioned in the agenda item, Gustafson was discussed at the Parks Master Planning session in March. The addition of picnic benches, soccer athletic field, some play structures, not playgrounds, but play structures kind of similar to what we're putting at the new Lyman P. White Park. However, that master plan has not been formally approved yet. Trailside was planned for the master planning session in April. At this time, staff's requesting direction on the council on how they'd like to handle these 3 park properties. If they'd like to formally dedicate any or all of these 3 parks, a resolution would be brought to a future meeting for council approval, or to revoke any or all of the designations as parks and make these lands available for future development.
Excellent. I'm more interested in, because I was unable to watch the last park board meeting when any of this was visited. I don't know if it was even put on YouTube for that meeting. I know been having some extra meetings that aren't. But I know you're the liaison. We do have the liaison here.
I don't believe that this came up at the last park board meeting. Did it come up at the one previous to that?
No, we haven't formally discussed those 3 properties specifically. I know through the conversations with the Buffalo Hills Lions Park, obviously that one's already pretty well programmed and developed, with the exception of what's in the master plan with the walking, hiking, skiing trail through the undeveloped portion of that property. And like I mentioned, Gustafson and Trailside were scheduled to have their master plans completed upcoming.
Yeah, I would say that given the way that the master planning has went, these are kind of the tail end items. And so these are more parks that have not been established. So Gustafson is a great example. It used to be Garfield School, burned down way in the past. And now it's just an empty field. We used it for kids' t-ball for a while. But I think in terms of what we would do with that, I don't think there's any grand vision for any of that stuff. Now, Trailside has had large-scale drawings made in the past, but I think we've since moved beyond that. I think what the park board has looked at from that is that that's probably not something that's in our near future. Very expensive design set of plans for new baseball fields and everything. And I think the park board has moved away from that for sure. So, you know, I've had a couple conversations with people not in official meetings, just specifically stating that, you know, one of the issues we have as a park system is that we have a lot of parkland. And our goal should be to make sure that we're able to maintain it. So I think whatever decision the council makes, that will probably be looked upon favorably.
I'm hesitant to make any resolution or revocation of any of these designated parklands that haven't officially been designated without the park board actually formally talking it over. I think the mayor is pretty spot on what the conversation will likely turn out to be, but I don't think that without that being visited, I just don't think that we should move it one way or the other. And one question I have, if we were to adopt a resolution formally dedicating these lands, what would be if it were to come up 6 months down the road that, oh, somebody was interested in developing this part that the park board later says they don't really have a problem with it, what would be the process on removing that as a dedicated parkland?
I think I'd have to consult with the attorney on seeing what the process would be based on probably the charter.
Yeah.
I know it talks about the park board has, I don't want to call it ownership, but responsibilities for parklands that are dedicated as parks, and I don't think it really addresses going the other direction with it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Jesse, if we do nothing tonight but say, ask for a park board recommendation on this, that's qualifies as I mean, that's something staff can deal with, right?
Yep, we can do that.
Just the direction? Direction without motion?
That's fine.
Are we okay with that? I think we kind of added that in our motion when we originally did this.
It's supposed to go back to parks, I do believe.
I just think that they've had full meetings as far as their agenda items since then.
Is there any urgency to this on your side of it, do you think, or?
Nope. Nope, they've been operated as parks for quite a while, so from my perspective, nothing really
only-
changes.
The
at
only
this point.
urgency I could see coming forward would be somebody interested in developing in Brainerd and this being on the table or not on the table. So I don't think there's a rush because we have other land that can be developed right now too. So let's maybe just wait, hold off on it until either next meeting or the meeting after, whenever the park board has a chance to actually discuss all 3 of those.
Okay.
And how much. I'm actually interested in whether or not they want to keep any of it, all of it, part of Buffalo Hills Park as parkland, and or how much park they want to continue as parkland at Trailside. You know, there's 120 or more acres that we don't we don't see happening as a whole park, I think, and I just want them to talk that over. Does that make sense?
I am also interested in, so, I mean, Trailside was 2005, but what the charter said in 1971 about parkland, what the charter said in 1974, and how that affects what, you know, how it was dealt with at that time, and how that might affect what we do now. Does that make sense, Jesse?
So you're thinking how charter changes back in the 70s, how it was handled back then?
Yeah, if
versus
there
how
have
it-
been any, so we know, like, you know, in the charter, we're supposed, when we have a park, we're supposed to be dedicating the parkland, right?
Correct.
Was that the case in the 70s when these came in? Or did they come in and enter the park system before the charter said that?
As far as I guess as far as I could tell, there wasn't a resolution ever brought together, whether or not it predates anything in the charter that says you
That you
needed
need
to actually
one?
dedicate it.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you that. We'd have to
Yeah,
do
and
some
we couldn't
digging.
find any record of anything being dedicated before, but Jeff and I were both on the charter commission as we went through the charter, and I don't recall any changes to any parkland language, other than I think we changed some things about how the park board itself runs, and that was about it.
Yeah, nothing about parkland that I recall was amended, but
Are we okay setting that back with just direction and no motion then? Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Excellent. All right, moving on to item 5, our final item. Discussion on the Lum Park Road SPRA project. Again, Mr. Dean.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So include in your packets a memo regarding the Lum Park Road State Park Road Account Project and the discussion and presentation for the Park Board at their meeting last week. Right with this, staff's highest priority with this street is safety and the ability to pass emergency vehicles through the area at all times, including especially when events are occurring at Lum Park. To fully accommodate those vehicles in the event of vehicles approaching in the opposite direction, parking would need to be removed from both sides of Lum Park Road. Park Board did take formal action requesting that the council authorize additional funds to add parking on Lum Park Road and the boat launch access road to offset parking that will be lost elsewhere. If the council does not approve the additional funds, they would like to see the parking stay as is on Lum Park Road. In reviewing, the staff would recommend the additional cost for adding parking on the boat launch access road only. As this area is closer to facilities, the likelihood of utilization is higher than along Long Park Road, which is a little bit more disconnected from many of the facilities and is likely not to see regular utilization. There are 3 potential alternatives in the agenda request for you. As mentioned, to fully accommodate the emergency vehicles, option 1, removing parking from both sides, would accommodate that. However, based on the action taken by Park Board, staff's recommendation would actually be for option 2, which would remove parking from the north side of Lum Park Road only. This would allow for emergency vehicle access when cars are parked on the south side, if there are no approaching vehicles, while also keeping some on-street parking on Lum Park Road. As mentioned, we are also recommending additional costs to adding parking along the boat launch access road. Those additional costs would also include Widseth for a change in scope, more time needed for redesign, and more in construction costs as well. On a side note, Park Board did discuss the alignment of the trail and their desire to see this go through the historic arch and through the park rather than along Lum Park Road. As the design is mainly complete, this would also require a contract amendment by Widseth to accommodate the additional hours needed to do the redesign of the trail. So a contract amendment is being prepared and which will be brought to a council future meeting. But as of right now, we're just discussing the street itself and the parking along it.
So a contract amendment, what would your estimate be in the change in that?
I wouldn't anticipate a huge amount of money difference, but it's going to be a few hours to have to redo that because we'll have to get some more survey, which the engineering staff, I've committed to putting our engineering staff to try and do that survey to help with costs. But they will have to do a little bit more hours on both the trail and if we're going to do some additional parking the additional design with that, because we'll have some grading issues that we'll have to resolve. But there'll be a few hours in redesigning that. But most of the project is currently designed and the specifications prepped. It's just a matter of wrapping up these few things before we're ready to go for bid. So to change some of those things, we'll just have to put some more hours in from Woodseth's perspective. But I have not got that proposal yet.
Okay. You guys have any input?
So, okay, I just want to kind of, I don't know, kind of hash this out. When we heard from the council at the March 6th meeting, removing half of the parking essentially is what we'll be doing if we go with recommendation. Is that still going to allow for enough parking availability for those, when those programs are taking place that we discussed, which require a lot of parking? Is that going to be, has this recommendation been talked about with the park board, Jesse? That's, I guess, the option number 2.
No, sir. The park board had formal action that requested the additional parking added to both streets, and if that can't be accommodated, they request that the parking on Lum Park Road be left as is. It is staff's recommendation to remove the one side
Okay. And
to accommodate the emergency
do we have an
vehicles.
estimated cost of the additional parking?
I do not,
Okay,
not yet.
that doesn't make it very easy.
No, so we kind of have two recommendations. We have our city engineer recommending removing parking from the north side of the street. But we also have a formal motion, I believe, from the park board. Part of that motion was to maintain parking on both the north and south side of the street, is what I'm gathering, along with additional funds for parking if we do not keep that parking.
I'd flip it around. If you don't want to commit the additional funds to adding parking on those two sides, so like angled parking or additional parallel parking, if you're not willing to accommodate the additional funds needed for that, they would like to see Lum Park Road stay as it is today, with parking on both sides.
Okay. I'm okay keeping it the same way. If we can go back and have Widseth rework that with the trail going somewhere else and maintaining what the road is today, I think
Mr. Chair?
solves it all. Yeah,
There is an additional fee with leaving it the way it is, correct?
There's not. Are you talking, for the trail, there will be. But we're not really necessarily talking about the trail right now. But for the street, yes, we would not have additional costs if we leave it as it is in the plan.
additional cost of about $12,000. I believe our grant.
Right,
our
to leave
grant
the
would
width,
be-
correct.
Our grant is about 165,000, I believe.
I think it was 143, if I remember right.
Close enough.
Yes.
It's up to you guys to make the motion.
Well, I think last time we talked about this, we heard from the mayor, and he had very strong opinions.
Oh, I love to talk, you know that. So in talking with the park board, the concern with this was just making sure we're aligning ourselves with what the vision is. If we're gonna redo a road, let's make sure we do it right. And what came back from them was exactly what I had feared was, no, this is not really what they had envisioned, and it is in that we're going to be moving parking from down by the water. And where's that parking gonna go then if we're removing all of it? What they had asked was, is there a possibility to create cutouts where we could have diagonal parking, potentially further down, closer to the boat landing? Being mindful of some of those large pines, maybe working around that, creating some cutouts within that area. And that's really what the motion was. The motion coming back from them was, we'd really like to see this designed in a way where there's some parking along the street. However, there's an understanding that there's cost to that. And if that cost outweighs the benefit to the council, then they would like to see the parking left as is.
Understood? If I were to make a motion, I would motion to keep the road as is.
With the extra 12,000?
Correct.
That, Jesse, that's what we're looking at?
That's entirely up to you. If you want to do the narrowing for traffic calming, the cost estimate's kind of where it is today. To widen it back out to where the curb is today, that would be the extra 12,000, roughly.
When did we get that number of 12,000? Because I remember differently when I asked the question, what would it cost about the road, not the trail?
So that is from Woodseth. I asked them to give me a price on what it would be to leave the street width as it is today instead of doing the narrowing. So the additional cost from their estimate is 12,000 roughly.
I'd move to leave the street as it is, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to keep the street as is without removing parking. Any more discussion? Hearing none, go to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We can adjourn to the council meeting in 5 minutes.